Hello everyone. So in this video, making good on my promise, I will go a little bit deeper in this whole investigation of the particular source and origin, the location of NI authenticity. Where is the DNA? Where does it get formed? How does it relate to the mechanisms of adaptation that are at one and the same time crucial to our survival, crucial to our interaction with other people, to our being able to function in this world, to our being able to be in relationships, to be happy, to flourish. But there is always this delicate interaction and process of mutual adjustment, what I like to call a reflective equilibrium, between NI authenticity and the forces of adaptation. Okay, so again, if we bring a little bit of psychoanalysis into this picture, I think we can try and locate the origin of NI. And this could be something that is really new, guys, by the way. It's something that probably no other channel that you will find online, explores this particular issue, this particular topic. It's true that it is exploratory and it's hypothetical, but that's also cutting edge research. Okay, so let's keep this in mind, because hopefully you can also find that exciting, even if you end up disagreeing, and that's just part of the course, part of the game. So no problem with that. What are the particular features of NI, if you agree with me? NI is holistic. NI looks for plenitude, for fullness, for oneness. It's oceanic. It has a particular kind of flow that is slow. NI is full. There's not a lot of air in our NI minds. And again, the aspiration towards oneness and wholeness seems to be captured in a lot of different NI visions. NI is always trying to incorporate, encapsulate, and contain as a whole, right? So you can imagine this sort of like big sphere that is very compact and nothing kind of sticking out. It's all inside the sphere, right? It's not atomistic in the way the SI axis functions, okay? So, subjectively speaking, the NI dominance has this particular oceanic experience defined by all these particular subjective peculiarities that I just described. I think that if we think in terms of the particular image, the particular metaphor, because we know that mental images are absolutely crucial to our personalities, and they have names, right? They are kind of if you like, they are the kind of building blocks of our metaphors. They are the building blocks of the story we tell ourselves as INFJs and INTJs too, because we know that narrative in the individuation process of the INFJ and the INTJ is absolutely fundamental. The building blocks, right, are images, are fragments of metaphors. If you like, INFJs have a very, very highly developed imaginary realm, right? In fact, more developed than the symbolic realm. And here I'm using the symbolic realm not in the sense of symbol as used by Jung, which would belong more to the imaginary realm. Symbolic realm in terms of the use of words to represent other things, the connection between a sign and a signifier. A car and the word car. There's a symbolization connection there, right? That INFJs can manage, but it is not their primary domain. And the real is not their primary domain either, because they experience alienation. The imaginary realm is the most fertile realm for INFJs, which is why fantasy is super important in INFJ life, both fantasy with an F, which is conscious, fantasy with PH, which is unconscious. When we bring all that together, it seems to me, and now we are entering into hypothetical territory, that there's something very primordial about NI. Now we know that NI is primordial in terms of its containing the particularly privileged access to primordial images, which is just a synonym for archetypes. But here I mean primordial in terms of an individual's life, being in the womb and the very early childhood experience of fusion with the mother, where there is oneness. In the womb, it's the ideal condition. The first 6 months of life, there is still a state of very strong fusion with the mother, which is akin to a kind of oneness, okay? That's primordial, not in the sense of since immemorial time. It's primordial in the sense of your life, of my life, of what are, the different stages of our childhood. The stage of very, very early childhood is also the stage where fantasy is unbelievably active. It's one of the very first and most powerful defense mechanisms that the infant starts using to deal with the terror that the mother might disappear. So they fantasize that their needs are being met in order to diffuse the potential anxiety of projecting that in reality their needs might not be met. It's a matter of survival for the child, including physical survival and psychological survival. That's where fantasy explodes. That's also where the imaginary realm starts germinating. And you are no stranger to the fact that I often talk about the qualitative experience of being inside the NI world as womb-like. That's not a surprise. I think it is, because there is a strong correlation, an analogy rather than correlation, an analogy between NI and the womb, between the holism of NI, the desire for oneness and being whole, with oneness with the mother. Okay, so this is subtle, this is certainly not conscious at all, and it may just be that if you widely disagree with me, this might be because this process is so buried deep that it's uncomfortable to deal with and we're not aware of it, or perhaps I'm wrong, but nevertheless, the power of these primordial images is really, really not, it's to be reckoned with, it's not to be ignored. And I think that in the constitution of NI and the relationship to authenticity, there is always a desire to go back to the origin. It's really interesting because NI projects itself into the future, but I think the motivating desire is actually a return to the origin, to define the future in order to find confirmation that the future can be like the origin, and to recover the origin in some sense by inventing it or creating it in the future. This is going deep. Now, as for the mechanisms of defense, well, I don't have a lot of time to explore them here, but I can do that in a later video. Well, the mechanisms of defense are, fantasy is a very kind of primitive one, but in terms of the more mature ones, and I discussed intellectualization, I discussed rationalization, and there's other forms of intellectual, rational kinds of defense mechanisms. I think they are just as crucial to the INFJ, but more in relation to adaptation and not so much to authenticity, because if you think about it, if NI were to get its wish to be purely by itself and womb-like, well, the INFJ wouldn't be very adapted, and it would be in a condition that is actually not very different from that of psychosis. And so you can really start to appreciate that what seems like limitations, and you saw that in my previous videos, I did make them sound, at least at times, like limitations, like rationalization, intellectualization, reaction formation, isolation of affect is another one, where INFJs can get a bit blunted in terms of knowing where their emotions come from, even though they can talk about them in kind of abstracted, essentialized language. There's a reason why these exist. It is to defend against the engulfment of the entire personality by NI. Because NI by itself is not adapted. NI by itself is psychotic in a sense. And that's not to say INFJs are psychotic, because INFJs are not just NI. They are 4 functions, including 2 functions that are oriented to the outside world and are going to be very geared toward adaptation. So there's a very, very complex process of, like I said, mutual adjustments, reflective equilibrium happening between the tendency of NI toward self-sufficiency and self-containment, desire to be whole, and the functions that are more oriented to adaptation, where there is this directedness toward the other and this directedness toward the sensory enveloping quality of the external world. And in some sense, you could really interpret the life of the INFJ, the life of the individuating INFJ, the life of the spiritualizing INFJ, as a life always having to contend with these 2 forces and finding the majestic in between. The interstice, or to be more precise, the turning it into a routine of knowing how to locate and invest those interstices. Okay, guys, if you want to know more and in fact not as complex perhaps as this particular video. You know, I've written 2 books. The Infinite Soul is all about the side of authenticity for INFJs, how to be in the world authentically yourself as an absolute key to flourishing, to leading a good, productive and purposeful life. Meaning is at the core of this book. Get it, check the reviews, it's helped a lot of people already. A lot of people are telling me that this book has sometimes redefined their lives. So check it out. The link below for the book and for the prequel, if you want to understand more about the INFJ mind, the Ecstatic Soul, and you look at the INFJ personality, is the book to get. This is the deepest investigation into what it is like to be an INFJ and to think like an INFJ. So these books go well together. I do recommend you get both of them. And as usual, guys, don't forget that I am very, very grateful if you would consider supporting me on Patreon, make donations to me, because I could not do it without you. You know, Patreon is one of the main sources of income. I think it has the potential to make me more independent, so I can be sure that I have a model where I can continue producing content for you guys and producing research and new books. So consider supporting me. It's less than $4 a month, and you get access to some really cool perks, you know, access to a Discord server, and I'm there pretty much every day. We can talk, you can get informal typings, we can have great discussions with the other members of the community as well, access to bonus videos every 2 weeks where we go even deeper in these videos. So if you are addicted to that kind of stuff, you should definitely have a look at that and other perks too. So hopefully see you there, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.